I gave them the gospel, and that was it. But in reality, is that the case? How is it that people in the New Testament time were able to open up homes that they would have never gone into? You're talking about pagans. That these Christians went into their homes and were able to open the door. How do you think they did that? They gave themselves first. They involved themselves in other people's lives, and as a result of that, they opened doors to sharing the gospel. That's exactly the model that Jesus laid out. Jesus went about doing good. As a result of him doing good, many people responded. You had those who would follow Christ just to get the food that he was going to give them, right? But you had also those who were diligently, sincerely searching for the truth. Now, because of one group, did Jesus say, well, I'm not going to feed anybody because, half of them are only here for the food? No. What did Jesus do? Jesus continued to do a good. He didn't let a few stop him from what he knew was his mission to do. And by doing that, it opened up the door. You look through the book of Acts. Every time the church grew, it was in connection with the apostles or church members giving something to somebody else. Every time. You look at the very first time the church began, and the church met, studying the apostles' doctrine, in fellowship, in breaking of a bread, and you read a few more verses down, and it says, and they had all things in common, and they were sharing with anybody who was in need. Anybody who was in need. And then it says there that the church grew. You go on down to Acts chapter 3, and you find the man sitting by the gate, and you have Peter walking by the gate, and this man comes to Peter, and he says, he's asking for alms, asking for something, and Peter says, silver and gold have I none. Why do you think he chose to say silver and gold? How many people would walk around with silver and gold in their pockets? But they would walk around with coins, wouldn't they? You see, Peter identified the man's need. The need wasn't to be rich, to have silver and gold. What was his need? His need was far deeper than money. His need was to walk. Because with him being healed of his infirmity, then what could he do? He could stand and he could work. You see, he identified the root of his problem, which was a hindrance to him going out and earning his own living. And as a result of that, Peter healed this man. He reached down to the root of his problem, fixed that problem, and then what happened? It gave an opportunity to share the gospel. And it says the church multiplied as a result of that. You go on through the New Testament, and you will see time and time again the church growing at the hand of benevolent acts. What is benevolence? It literally means, by Webster's dictionary, to do good for others, period. Doesn't matter what type of help it is, its meaning is to do good for others. God's plan in his church is a sense of community, of fellowship, of having something in common with. And so as we work as a church to help others and assist others in these situations, what you're doing is you're calling them into your fellowship. Let me tell you an example real quickly here, and I'll tell you more examples later on. We've dealt with a family called the Harbins. And I told them that I was going to mention them to you, and they said, feel free to. The Harbins fell in love with the church first, which opened the door to salvation. They were, you talk about destitute and difficult times. I tell you, I don't know if many of you have been there. I'm not talking about financial problems on its own. I'm talking about habits. Habits that develop by living in such a condition that you, I asked myself, first time I drove away from their house having a Bible study, can people change? Can people change? I found my faith kind of wavering. And then I had to almost slap myself silly to say, hey, the gospel changes people. And we got to allow it to work. Well, the Harbins, they fell in love with the church because we showed that we cared. We helped them through benevolent works, church-wide, individual-wide, and then they came to love the Lord's body. And then the next question, what did they ask? How do I be a part of it? How do I be a part of that? You see, the church is the bride of Christ. The book of Revelation tells us that the Spirit and the bride say, come. The church is described as being the bride of Christ. As a result of that, what bride have you ever seen that's ugly? I don't believe I've ever seen an ugly bride. That's the way the church is. The church is beautiful. It's beautiful to those who look and they see what the church is all about. Now, some may say that only, and I touch this lightly. Some may say that benevolent works can only be done by individual Christians and not the church. Have you heard that? That only individual Christians can work. But there are certain passages in the Scripture that teaches otherwise. Namely, Galatians chapter 6 and verse 10, in which that letter is written to the churches of Galatia, plural. And you get down there to verse 6, and it says, do good unto all men, especially the household of faith. It delineates between the two groups. But nonetheless, it says that you are to do good unto both groups. Unto both groups. There's other passages that we can touch on, and I brought another handout if you have questions about that. But the idea here is that the church is made up of all the individuals. The letter to the church at Corinth describes that each individual has its own place in the church. And so this church is the sum of its individual parts.